15. Haft Tappeh, an excursion into southern Iran. Abu Ali Sina University. I always wanted to visit Iran, but could not find the excuse that would pay for the trip. The Shah of Iran was still in power in 1976 when Taghi Farvar returned to work in Tehran. One of the first things Taghi attempted to do was to introduce at Abu Ali Sina University the formation of his cluster model of education units. Like myself, Taghi was very impressed with how the Oil Committee program in St. Louis, Missouri in the spring of 1975 had been able to sensitize science students to an awareness of the social context within which their educational skills could flourish. This started to look like the opportunity I craved. In May 1976, Taghi invited a group of us, mostly from his old contacts in the Oil Committee, to participate in a conceptual forum at the university. Although Abu Ali Sina University was licensed in 1973, it was only ready to admit students in 1976. The university's programs included chemistry, electrical engineering, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, and agricultural engineering. However, students would be required to register for a cluster of courses attendant to their main discipline. This was the effort to institutionalize a convergence of structural coursework and social awareness that had worked so well for us in the Oil Committee workshops for foreign students in the USA. Incidentally, Abu Ali Sina University was named after Ibn Sina, also known as Abu Ali Sina, and known in the West as Avicenna. He was a Persian sage, 1980 to 1037, who was regarded as one of the most significant physicians, astronomers, thinkers, and writers of the Islamic Golden Age, and the father of early modern medicine. Participating in this seminar were myself and Georgine Primavera from the Philippines. We encouraged the staff to always maintain a reference to the social developments in Iran while promoting scientific research. In return, we ourselves were exposed to an exhibition on traditional architecture by the Iranian American Society. I am not sure whether Abu Ali Sina University still maintains its student cluster curriculum. I never maintained any association with the institution after Taghi moved on to his work with the indigenous nomads of Iran. This way to Haft Tappeh. Having gotten this opportunity to travel so far, I thought I could use the trip to make a surprise visit to a friend of mine from Dominica who was married to a former Peace Corps volunteer, now an engineer with a sugar company located in Haft Tappeh in rural Iran. Getting to Haft Tappeh itself was to turn out to be a daunting task. Haft Tappeh itself was an extremely small village in Jayavan rural district in Khuzestan province. To give you an idea of its size, 30 years after my visit, that is, in the 2006 census, its population had grown to 382 in 78 families. The size of the village belittled the importance of its location in the Shah's Iran. Here, the Iranian government had built one of the largest sugar factories in Iran, producing sugar from both beet and cane. I myself had absolutely no idea where I was attempting to reach. The place was not even appearing on my maps. The closest township was a place called Desful, about 730 kilometers south of Tehran. Geographically, I was attempting to traverse Iran from north to south, with Tehran in the north towards the Caspian Mountains and Haft at the extreme south on the Persian Gulf. It took an 8-hour train ride to get there. All of this is post-visit knowledge. I am not sure that I would have continued with this effort had I known all of this. Furthermore, there was no way of even alerting my friends of my intention to visit. Very crazy stuff at best. Finding the train station. The Bu Ali Sina workshop had been over and I was staying with Taghi and his wife in northern Tehran. There was an engineering student who came over to the apartment every day to get guidance in constructing some experimental model. His name was Ali, and he always addressed me in the fondest of terms, using the word Azizam, which is the equivalent of saying dear. He was about 16 years, spoke no English, but was eager enough to communicate in Farsi, which I did not understand. During the morning of my departure for Haft, we were spending some time trying to understand each other. The time was getting close for my departure for the railway station, and I was expecting Taghi to take me there in his car. Finally, Taghi called his wife to tell her that the traffic was horrendous and that she should ask Ali to try to get me there. I have to give this kid much credit for his latent ingenuity. This youth sprang immediately into action. We walked about 15 minutes to an intersection with the longest avenue in Tehran called Valisair Street. Its length was about 18 kilometers. What was so cool about Valisair Street was that it connected the northern part of the city where Taghi lived to the southernmost part of Tehran. In fact, it started at Taghi Square and ended up at Rahahan Square, which was my destination. Once we had gotten to Valisair Street, Azizam Ali gave me 3 words in Farsi and one direction. The first word was Istak Rahahan, which meant the train station located in Rahahan Square at the end of Valisair Street. In fact, he just drilled me to say Rahan. Got it. The second word sounded like Mustaqim. This meant straight ahead. And the third word was Bihish, a term used by the locals to signal when they wished to stop the taxi. Now for the direction. He pointed out how to recognize a taxi plying this route. Then he instructed me, all in Farsi, while I am looking at his hand movements, to get into any taxi, and if that taxi ever turned off this road, just say Bihish. Get out of the taxi, pay the guy what the meter reads, go back to the corner, and take another taxi going Mustaqim. Tapping me on the shoulder, he assured me that eventually I will get there. I did. And after some communications hiccup, I was finally able to purchase my ticket and find the correct track for the train. Sitting in the wrong section. Boarding time came. I went onto the train, found what I thought was a comfortable compartment, and took a seat next to the window. Soon after, a few other persons entered the compartment and also took seats. However, there was this fat lady who took a seat at the end of my bench and started to immediately make a lot of noise. I did not realize that because of the distance I was about to travel, the seats were actually convertible beds, with the one above being lowered down to form the upper bed of a bunk setup. Anyway, this woman just continued to fret and fret until a young girl sitting opposite us went out and brought in the conductor. "Where are you going, sir?" "To Tappeh." "Okay. A pause. But why are you sitting in the women's compartment? It was only then that yours truly realized that I was the only male in this compartment. You see, in Shia Iran, even before the mullahs came to power, public facilities were separated, men from women and children. With profuse apologies, I made an unceremonious exit with all of the ladies laughing. I felt that if I had known some Farsi, I would have responded, "Sorry, ladies, but it could have been lots of fun." A night of Arabian songs. Okay, so now I am correctly seated in the male section with a group of loud Arab guys. I should explain. Because Haft was in southern Iran, where the lingua franca was Arabic rather than Farsi, most of the passengers going that far south would generally be Arab speakers. The guys were very polite, and the only English-speaking one explained to me that Arab men loved to sing, although they really didn't have good voices. It was worse than a karaoke session at our local rum shop. We made a deal. They would sing their songs and then give me a chance to sing one of mine. Well, it was a fair deal for a couple of reasons. I had been open to trying to understand other cultures. Part of this was an attempt to learn to play the national anthem of various countries on my mouth organ. Another part was to learn folk songs in their native dialect. I remembered one which I will call Alesh Mariam. I had learned it from my Moroccan roommate at Miami University. I'm not certain what it meant, and I had forgotten the rest of the words. Later, I tried researching it, and the closest I could find in my research was the Arabic term or phrase, Ma'alesh. In a short story, a girl gets a gift she doesn't want, and the Egyptian man says to her what sounds like Ma'alesh, and is supposed to mean too bad, or there's nothing to be done about it. Anyway, when my turn came around, I started with the first stanza of my Alesh Mariam. Luckily for me, they all knew the song, and before you knew it, I was being drowned out with the vociferous singing. That was a lucky break, because had I been forced to do a solo, it might have been even worse embarrassing than sitting in the women's carriage. I've been at nowhere. I got about 3 hours sleep before the conductor came around to inform me that the next stop in 10 minutes will be Haft. It was my expectation that, on alighting the train, I would just take a taxi and drive to the factory compound. Well, that was to be the next surprise. Only 2 passengers came off the train, myself and an old lady. I looked around, but it all looked like a ghost town. The few houses that were there were all made of clay, with roofs upon which some dried brown grass had grown. The only recognizable structures were the phalanx of TV antennas above these odd mud structures. Suddenly, a car approached, and I became hopeful that it may be a taxi. Nope, it was the son of the elderly woman coming to pick her up. She got into the car and they started to drive off. Panic set in, and I immediately ran behind the car, shouting that they could not leave me here alone. The driver stopped the car to inquire who I was and where I was heading. I told him I was there to visit an American engineer by the name Mark Thomas. He recognized the name and said, "Come on in. I will have to take you there because you surely will not get through the security at the gate." At the gate, he explained to the guards where I was going and then drove me up to this beautiful one-level home. It was about 6:15 a.m. and there I was banging on Mark's door. He opened the door, gave me a look, and said, "What do you want?" I said, "Hi, Mark." He then made an explanation. "Alan, what the expletive deleted are you doing here?" Shouting out to his wife, who was still in bed, he said, "Barbara, you are not going to believe who just turned up." She recognized my voice and shouted, "Mon Dieu, Alan Williams." We settled down to a sweet breakfast, with me presenting them with the black cake and spices I had been given by a mutual friend to deliver to them. Mark was anxious to show me some of the archaeological sites near Haft. One of the more awe-inspiring sites was Chokozambil Temple in the holy city of Elam. The Chokozambil ziggurat was located at a distance of 30 kilometers southeast of Shush or Susa and 80 kilometers north of Avaz in Khuzestan province, southwest Iran. It is the only remnant of an ancient city that was constructed approximately in 1300 BC. The ziggurat is arguably the most distinct architectural feature of the Mesopotamian civilization, which was in ancient Iraq. Nevertheless, some of these structures had been found to exist outside the area once occupied by this ancient civilization. One of these ziggurats is located in Chokozambil, meaning basket mound, near Susa in Khuzestan province of modern Iran. I expressed surprise at finding out that the tomb of the prophet Daniel, yes, the one that survived the lion's den, the tomb was in Desful, very close by. We visited the tomb, which was in the basement of a mosque. I later came to realize that my surprise sprung from my ignorance about these places in the Old Testament. Actually, Prophet Daniel was not only living and working in this area, but he even mentioned Susa in the book of Daniel 8:2 in the Bible. I quote, "In the 3rd year of the king of Belshazzar, I, Daniel, had another vision. In the vision, I saw myself in Susa, the fortified city in the province of Elam. I noticed that I was by the river Ulai." After visiting the town of Desful, I returned to Tehran and, using Azizam's direction in reverse, got back safely to Taghi's apartment.